Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Pagani design PD-1685. This watch is available from Trendy Men's Watch Store on AliExpress for €118. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So this is the familiar matte black cardboard Pagani design watch box that comes with the watch. One removes the lid and the watch sits on a piece of foam inside a foam cutout panel, as one would expect. So although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to use this style of watch box, bearing in mind it is a low tier price point piece at only €118. With the watch you also get this owner's instruction manual. It is basic, but it does have diagrams and the instructions are in English, so it's a useful read if you're unfamiliar with the Seiko NH35A automatic movement used in the watch. This is the plastic guarantee card. It's not filled in, however I'm pleased to report that the watch is covered by a 12-month international guarantee, which is very reassuring. And lastly, one also gets this Pagani design microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth included with a watch, regardless of its price point. This is something else that comes with a watch. It's a seatbelt weave nylon NATO strap. Good attention to detail. As you can see, the buckle is laser engraved with Pagani design and the brand emblem to a high standard. Good heavy gauge of metal. It's solid 316L grade stainless steel. The keepers are stitched either side, so they're not going to slide out of position. And again, good attention to detail because the third keeper is also laser engraved with Pagani design to a high standard. So good quality stitching throughout, and I think the quality of the seatbelt weave fabric means that it's going to last for a good length of time. So it's nice to get this included with the watch if the stainless steel bracelet isn't your own personal taste. So with regards to the specification of the watch itself, this is the Pagani design PD-1685, and as you can see it is clearly an homage to the Omega Seamaster. It does that very well because it follows very similar proportions to the Seamaster. 42mm case diameter. It has a 49mm lug-to-lug measurement. The thickness is 14.2mm, including the double dome sapphire crystal. It has a 20mm lug width, and the bracelet is straight. It doesn't taper from 20mm at the lugs down to the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see the solid 316L grade stainless steel clasp is beautifully engraved with Pagani design and brushed satin finish to a high standard. So, double dome sapphire crystal, there is a negative to it. It doesn't have AR coating on the underside. So that's a disappointment, and it's something that I think that Pagani design could improve upon. If it had AR coating, it would be less reflective and there would be less glare. Now, unfortunately, the applied indices and also the blued hands also compound this highly reflective nature, and it does have a reflective silver finish to the wavy dial. So really it does need AR coating to reduce that glare and the highly reflective property of the double dome sapphire crystal. But having said that, there's a nice lip to the double dome crystal which looks like a top hat crystal, and also it does complement the blue ceramic bezel insert. The ceramic bezel insert has a Lume pip on the triangle and it is finished to a high standard. Fully lumed, which is interesting because I previously reviewed the white dull version on rubber strap of the PD-1685, and that bezel insert didn't have lumen over. But as you'll see when I do the lume test, this bezel insert has been upgraded and the Arabic numerals and minute ticks are fully lumed with C3 superlumen over. With regards to the case finishing, it has a nice large bevel machined on the tops of the lugs, which mark the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks of the case. The flanks are brushed satin finish to a high standard, and the mirror polishing is flawless, as is the scalloping on the solid stainless steel bezel. Nice screw down crown, which is coin edge finish and signed with the Pagani design emblem. So let's test the crown action. Silky smooth to unscrew, very satisfying, and it has the characteristic pop of the Seiko NH35A automatic movement. So the movement has hand binding and hacking, and one can manually wind it in the first position to top up the power reserve to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Now with regards to the date complication, it's sighted at 6 o'clock, which is good because it retains the symmetry of the dial. It does replicate the current Seamaster, and I think that they've made the correct decision by putting the date complication at 6 rather than 3, which is the earlier version's position. Now with regards to the crown, silky smooth to screw it back down. It provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance, which is perfectly acceptable. And now the bezel action, let's test that. It's got a light resistance to it. I would describe it as lighter than the PD-1681 if you're familiar with that, or lighter than a Steinhardt Ocean 1. Now unfortunately there are some negatives to it. There is slight lateral side to side play, and there is also 1 to 2 clicks of back play, as you can see. The resistance of the 90 click unidirectional bezel does feel even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation, so that is good. But however, the lateral side to side play exists all the way around, as does the 1 to 2 clicks of back play, as you can see, so that is a disappointment. We have seen on other models of Pagani design watches, such as the PD-1661, they have tightened up on the bezel action, and also I recently reviewed a PD-1662 root spear, and that had outstanding bezel action. There was no lateral side-to-side play and no back play whatsoever. So they are capable of doing it. Now, the other disappointment is, rather than having the more conventional 60 click or 120 click unidirectional bezel, this has a 90 click bezel, which is an odd number. So I really think that's something they need to change. They either need to make it 60 click or 120 click, which are the industry standards. 90 click unidirectional bezels really are odd. So I don't know why they've done that, and I think it is a mistake. But having said that, despite the back play and the lateral side to side play, the alignment is correct. The Lume, pip and triangle at 12 o'clock on the bezel insert align correctly with the double applied indices. So I like the blued hands, but unfortunately I think they are undersized. They really need to be scaled up in proportion, closer to the scale and proportion of the Omega Seamaster hands, which this is an homage to. I don't like the partially skeletonized sword hands. I think they would be better fully loomed. But however, I appreciate this is an homage to the Seamaster, and they're trying to make it look as close as possible without being a direct copy. With regards to the bracelet, it is well finished, brushed satin finish to the 5 links, and then we have mirror polished sections to the centre links. The end links are a good fit to the case, which follows the shape of the Omega Seamaster case, and push pins in the bracelet, which I personally would prefer to see upgraded to screw pins, but however this is subjective. Some collectors actually prefer push pins for the ease of resizing the bracelet. Brushed satin finish to the top side, flanks and underside of the bracelet, and as I've discussed, the signed Pagani design 2-button push clasp is finished to a high standard. Solid stainless steel milled interior and brushed satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks. Now, one disappointment is the diver's extension. As you can see, it is solid stainless steel, but it's pressed metal rather than being milled stainless steel. On the Pagani design PD-1661 and PD-1662, they have a Rolex EasyLink style extension, which adds 5mm of extension to the bracelet, but it's made from milled solid stainless steel rather than being pressed metal. Light gauge of metal, and really I don't like the quality of it. I think that this is very poor, so they should either remove it or alternatively upgrade it to a solid milled stainless steel extension rather than this abhorrent pressed metal cost-cutting measure. Having said that, it does click in and out to a satisfactory standard, but however there are only 3 micro adjustment holes, as you can see. I think the bracelet clasp should be longer, and therefore it should allow for 5 micro adjustment holes, which would be better for fine tuning the length of the bracelet. So my recommendation to Pagani design would be to remove the pressed metal diver's extension and elongate the 2-button push clasp and drill 5 holes rather than having 3, because 3 just isn't enough movement on the end of the bracelet to fine tune the length of it. So with regards to the case back, it is very well executed. Brushed concentric satin finish to the centre section, and the circumference of it is mirror polished to a flawless finish. It's something I want to give due credit to Pagani Design for, because they do make very high quality screw down exhibition case backs. The centre section is glazed with mineral crystal, and it does a good job of showing off the undecorated Seiko NH35A automatic. The end links are a good fit to the case, and the underside of the case is very well finished. It's also mirror polished to a high standard. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, I've simply taken it out of the watch box, and as you can see, the 42mm case does fit my 8-inch wrist very well. However, this is an incredibly heavy piece. It weighs 184 grams with all the links in the Seamaster style bracelet. So I would say to you, if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you may find the 184 grams of heft to be excessive and therefore uncomfortable to wear the watch for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. However, if you are a collector with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches, you will find it is a very well balanced piece, because it's a 42mm case, so it is large, but because the bracelet is 20mm and it's parallel, it doesn't taper down to the 2-button push clasp. It does balance the weight of the head of the piece, which is the significant heft. So really this is a watch for collectors with a larger wrist. But having said that, if you do have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you could wear it on the NATO strap supplied, alternatively wear it on a rubber strap, which would reduce the heft of the piece significantly to below 150 grams and therefore make it more comfortable. If you haven't seen it, please feel free to check out my PD-1685 rubber strap version, and that has an integrated rubber strap, which is a good alternative if you're looking for a lighter piece with less heft. 49mm lug-to-lug measurement does give a good fit. I regard 48mm lug-to-lug to be the sweet spot, so it is very close to that, and the 20mm lug width does balance the 42mm head of the piece very well. So the proportions are very good, but it is a heavy piece at 184 grams, and that's something to be mindful of. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to its absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak. So as I've discussed, I previously reviewed the PD-1685 on the rubber strap. Now this has a different ceramic bezel insert because it's fully lumed with C3 Luminova. The PD-1685 on rubber strap version I reviewed had a white dial, and that didn't have C3 Luminova on the bezel insert, so it'll be interesting to see how that performs. And as you can see, it has not disappointed. The bezel Arabic numerals are fully lumed, as are the minute ticks. The applied indices are also fully lumed with C3 Luminova. So really, the only disappointment is the skeletonized sword hands. Really, they are undersized and they need to be scaled up in proportion. And that would allow for greater lume plots on the tips of the sword hands. I think the Lume's performing very well, and it's good to see Pagani Design have upgraded the quality of the C3 Luminova. It's glowing brighter and it's also glowing for a better length of time than the previous version I reviewed of PD-1685. So really the only disappointment are the hands. They need to be scaled up in proportion and have more lume, and as I've discussed, I think they would be better, rather than being skeletonized sword hands, to be fully lumed sword hands. But having said that, it is impressive, and I'm actually quite surprised by it because I thought the Lume was going to disappoint, but it is still continuing to glow for a good length of time. Yes, it's not as good as C3 Super Luminova, but however, one has to expect some cost-cutting measures at this price point. I think it's fair enough at €118, and I would describe the Lume as being okay quality. Now, with regards to the movement used, you will all be familiar with the Seiko NH35A automatic, which is made in Japan. It has 24 joules, it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which are useful complications, and the stated accuracy is -20 to +40 seconds per day, which is a wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that this one has been regulated to +10 seconds per day, which is very good. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable, so it is a credible choice for the movement, and I like the fact the date complication is at 6 and has a quick set function to it. So the movement is good, reliable, solid, well-proven workhorse movement, and also the fact that it's a Seiko NH35A means that there are modification possibilities. For example, you could modify the watch to upgrade the skeletonized sword hands to your own personal taste. I like the blued hands and also like the blued applied indices. They complement each other and they do contrast very well with the silver finish to the wavy dial. It does add interest to it. So it's very well thought through. The blued hands do complement the blue ceramic bezel insert, and I like the fact this is fully lumed, whereas the earlier version that I reviewed wasn't fully lumed. So lastly, I'll surmise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. I think the quality is good, but I can't say it's excellent because there are some shortcomings. The lateral side-to-side play of the bezel and also the 1 to 2 clicks of back play on the bezel mean that I cannot call it excellent quality. I would say it's good. It is acceptable, bearing in mind the price points, but really there is room for improvement. The C3 Luminova is definitely an improvement, and also I like the quality of the finishing throughout. There are no sharp edges to the case or bracelet. The quality of the mirror polishing and the brush satin finishing throughout are outstanding. But however, another negative is the pressed metal extension link, which I've shown you. Really, that needs to be upgraded to a solid milled extension link like the Rolex EasyLink extension. So there are certain areas that there are need for improvement, and I would increase the proportions of the hands as I've discussed. So I would say yes, it is good quality, and yes, it is good value. So I'm going to recommend it to you for your consideration, but bear in mind those shortcomings, and also bear in mind the 184 grams of heft, which make it a significantly heavy piece. So I hope you've liked my review of the Pagani Design PD-1685. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.